Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we explore the life of the 20th century's greatest architect of fantasy, a woman who was not a designer, not a photographer, not a model, but the maestro who conducted them all. She was the high priestess of style, a revered oracle, and a deposed monarch who rose from her own ashes to stage a final, breathtaking act. Her name was Diana Vreeland. To truly understand her, one must first embrace her personal philosophy, the one that guided her every pronouncement and creation. She called it faction, a seamless, unapologetic blend of fact and fiction. For Diana, a story's emotional truth was always more important than its literal accuracy. She believed in the power of embellishment to reveal a deeper reality. And the greatest story she ever told, the most elaborate piece of faction she ever composed, was herself. So, let us enter her world not as fact-checkers, but as willing believers, ready to be enchanted by the legend. Our story begins in the glittering crucible of the modern age, Paris, 1903. The Belle Epoque, the beautiful era, was in full swing. It was a city intoxicatingly alive with change. The Eiffel Tower was still a modern marvel. Automobiles were beginning to share the streets with horse-drawn carriages, and the worlds of art and society were colliding in spectacular fashion. This was the Paris of Marcel Proust, of Sarah Bernhardt, of the revolutionary ballet russe, whose explosive colors and exoticism, brought to the city by Sergei Diaghilev, were about to shatter the Victorian world's muted palette. It was into this world of prescribed elegance and simmering artistic rebellion that Diana Dalziel was born. Her family was perched comfortably in the upper echelons of society. Her father, Frederick Dalziel, was a British stockbroker of some means. Her mother, Emily Key Hoffman, was a celebrated American beauty, a society belle who moved through the world with the serene confidence of the adored. On the surface, it was an idyllic start, a life of privilege, nannies, and transatlantic travel. But within the walls of the family apartment on the Avenue du Bois de Boulogne, a private drama was unfolding, one that would become the psychological bedrock of Diana's entire life. This drama was centered on her relationship with her mother. Emily Hoffman was, by all accounts, a vision of conventional beauty, poised, elegant, and utterly captivating. She was also, in Diana's telling, profoundly cold and startlingly cruel. The wound that Diana carried with her was the unshakable belief that she was a disappointment to her mother, a frightfully ugly child. The most famous and searing of these memories, the one she would recount throughout her life, was of her mother remarking, "It's too bad that you have a sister who's so beautiful and you're so unattractive." Whether these were Emily Hoffman's exact words is part of the Vreeland faction, but the feeling was undeniably real. Diana grew up in the shadow of not only her mother's beauty, but also that of her younger sister Alexandra, who was conventionally lovely. Diana saw herself as a little monster, with her angular features, large nose, and gangly frame. This deep-seated maternal rejection, this primal sense of being the ugly duckling, became the furnace in which her unique genius was forged. It did not break her, it galvanized her. It sparked a lifelong, almost ferocious determination. If she could not possess the beauty the world valued, she would create a new value system. She would champion interest over prettiness, flair over perfection, personality over proportion. Her entire career would become a grand campaign against the tyranny of the conventional, a crusade on behalf of the flawed, the unusual, and the fascinating. When the guns of August 1914 signaled the start of the Great War, the Dalziel family, like many wealthy expatriates, fled Europe for America. New York was a jolt to the system. The energy was vertical, electric, and unapologetically commercial. For a young Diana, steeped in the mannered world of Parisian salons, it was a new language to learn. She was enrolled in the prestigious Brearley School, though she was by her own admission an indifferent student. Her real education took place in the dance studios and later in the ballrooms and speakeasies of the Roaring Twenties. In 1924, she married Thomas Reed Vreeland, a handsome Yale-educated banker. The match was a perfect ascent into the glamorous society of the Jazz Age. Reed, as he was known, was sophisticated and charming, and he adored Diana's burgeoning eccentricity. Their life together was a whirlwind. They moved to London, had 2 sons, Frecky and Tim, and for a while, Diana even ran her own chic lingerie shop near Berkeley Square. They were part of a glittering international set, flitting between London, Paris, and New York, hosting parties where the guest list might include Cecil Beaton or Cole Porter. But beneath the glamorous surface, there was private pain. Reed was not entirely faithful, a fact Diana handled with a public stoicism that belied the hurt. She poured her formidable energies into her children, her home, and her own ever more distinctive personal style, but there was a restlessness about her, a vast, untapped creative reservoir. She was a general without an army, a director without a play. By 1936, after returning to New York, that was all about to change. One fateful evening, in a swirl of white lace and perfect timing, Diana Vreeland's true life was about to begin. The stage for her discovery was the Saint, Regis Hotel, a bastion of New York society. The year was 1936. The Great Depression still cast a long shadow, but the city's elite danced on. That night, Diana was on the rooftop dance floor, wearing a white lace Chanel dress and, as she would later recall, roses in her jet black hair. Across the room, she was spotted by the one person in New York who could recognize not just a well-dressed woman, but a revolutionary talent in disguise, Carmel Snow. Snow was the legendary editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar, and she was on a mission to transform her magazine from a polite society journal into the most exciting and artistically advanced fashion publication in the world. She had an uncanny eye for genius. She saw Diana Vreeland dancing and was, in her own words, staggered. It wasn't just the chic dress. It was the entire being, the posture, the energy, the absolute command of her own unique style. Snow saw a woman who didn't follow fashion, but radiated it from her very bones. She offered Diana a job on the spot. Vreeland was flabbergasted, protesting that she had never worked, that she wouldn't know what to do, that she spent all her money on clothes. Snow's response was simple and irrefutable. "That's exactly why I want you." Snow understood that Diana's entire life had been her training. She hadn't studied fashion. She had absorbed it, lived it, and was now ready to invent its future. And so Diana Vreeland began her 26-year reign at Harper's Bazaar. Her official title was vague at first, but her role quickly became clear. She was the magazine's fantasy-in-chief. Her first and perhaps most iconic contribution was the column that became her calling card, "Why Don't You?" This column was a masterpiece of surrealist provocation. It was Vreeland's direct line to the subconscious of the American woman, a monthly dose of delightful absurdity. "Why don't you?" she mused on the page. "Have an elk hide trunk for the back of your car? Why don't you wear a chariot driver's helmet of gold? Why don't you own 12 diamond roses of different sizes? Why don't you wash your blonde child's hair in dead champagne, as they do in France?" On the surface, it was ludicrously out of touch, especially in an era of economic hardship. But its genius lay in its dual nature. It was both a gentle satire of the idle rich and a deeply sincere invitation to dream. The column wasn't advice, it was a dare to be more imaginative, more adventurous, more interesting. It was pure Vreeland, a flight of fancy that somehow made the real world seem a little bigger. Her true impact, however, came from her collaborations. At Bazaar, she formed a legendary triumvirate with Carmel Snow and the groundbreaking art director Alexei Brodovich. But her most profound creative partnership was with a young, intense photographer named Richard Avedon. Their relationship was more than just editor and photographer. It was a meeting of minds, a creative explosion that would define fashion photography for the next half-century. Vreeland didn't give Avedon simple assignments. She gave him emotions, narratives, impossible tasks. She would call him up and declare, "Dick, I want you to capture the exact moment a woman realizes she is the most beautiful woman in the room." Or, "Give me the wind." He would later say, "She saw in me and in others a potential that we hadn't seen in ourselves." She pushed him past the boundaries of commercial photography and into the realm of art. Their masterpiece, Dovima with Elephants, shot in Paris in 1955, is a testament to their synergy. The idea was pure Vreeland, the ultimate juxtaposition of delicacy and power. She envisioned the era's most elegant model, Dovima, in a dress by the new prodigy Yves Saint Laurent, then at Dior, posed between two massive circus elephants. The resulting image is breathtaking, a symphony of black and white, fragility and force, high fashion and raw nature. It is an image that tells 1,000 stories, and it could only have been born from Vreeland's fantastical imagination. She also worked brilliantly with the photographer Louise Dahl-Wolff, whose sun-drenched all-American style provided the perfect counterpoint to Avedon's European drama. Vreeland understood how to use both, creating a magazine that was both aspirational and accessible, both dreamy and modern. During the bleak years of World War II, when the world was gray and grim, Vreeland's work at Bazaar was a defiant act of color and optimism. She championed American designers like Claire McCardell, who offered stylish, practical solutions for women's new roles, while still insisting on the importance of fantasy and beauty as a form of morale. Her eye for faces was just as revolutionary. In 1943, she saw a photograph of a sullen-looking teenage model named Betty Joan Persky. While others saw an awkward girl, Vreeland saw a smoldering, defiant charisma. She put her on a now-famous Red Cross blood donor cover, and from there, Lauren Bacall's The Look was born, and a Hollywood legend was launched. For over 2 decades, Diana Vreeland was the unseen hand, the visionary mind, turning the pages of a magazine into a monthly manifesto for a more exciting life. By 1962, Vreeland had reached the pinnacle of her influence at Bazaar, but she was restless. At nearly 60, an age when others consider retirement, she was hungry for a bigger stage. That stage was Vogue. The move from Bazaar to the editor-in-chief position at its arch-rival was a seismic event in the publishing world. And from 1963 to 1971, Diana Vreeland didn't just edit Vogue. She became its soul, its voice, its swaggering, magnificent empress. If her time at Bazaar was about inventing a language, her time at Vogue was about shouting it from the rooftops. She took over a magazine that was respected but deeply conservative, a tasteful but timid publication under its previous editor, Jessica Daves. Vreeland blew the doors off the place. She felt the cultural vibrations of the 1960s, what she brilliantly dubbed the Youthquake, and channeled its chaotic, thrilling energy directly onto the page. Vogue was no longer a passive observer of culture. It became its epicenter. Her first order of business was to detonate the conventional standards of beauty. "Perfection is boring," she would declare to her staff. "I'm looking for a nose." She championed a new breed of models who were celebrated for their uniqueness, not their conformity. There was the aristocratic German Countess Veruschka, whose towering height and feline grace made her seem like an alien goddess. There was Jean Shrimpton, the face of swinging London. And then there was Twiggy, the skinny, wide-eyed girl from working-class London whose boyish frame upended centuries of feminine ideals. Vreeland adored them all. She put Barbra Streisand on the cover, celebrating her magnificent profile as a thing of beauty when studios wanted to surgically alter it. She saw the star power in a young, unconventional singer named Cher. To Vreeland, these women had what mattered most: character, personality, pizzazz. Her Vogue was a vibrant celebration of the individual, a testament to her lifelong belief. You don't have to be born beautiful to be wildly attractive. The photo shoots during the Vreeland era at Vogue became the stuff of industry legend, whispered about for their audacity and their astronomical cost. She thought on a cinematic scale. Budgets were not a constraint. They were a bore, an obstacle to be ignored in the pursuit of a spectacular vision. She dispatched her chosen teams to the most remote and exotic corners of the globe. She orchestrated the Great Fur Caravan, a shoot that traversed from Japan through Siberia and Turkey, costing a rumored $1 million in 1966. For one famous editorial, she sent Veruschka to Japan for a 25-page spread that involved, among other things, the model being painted head to toe and posing with a sumo wrestler. The shoot took 5 weeks. When a nervous accountant confronted her about the spiraling costs, she simply waved him away. The story was everything. Her creative partnership with Avedon reached its zenith here. Together, they created psychedelic solarized portraits and wildly kinetic fashion spreads that captured the dizzying spirit of the age. She pushed other photographers like David Bailey and Bert Stern to their creative limits. Her office, famously decorated by Billy Baldwin in what she called a garden in hell, a riot of blood-red fabric and leopard print, was the command center for this global operation of fantasy making. Beyond the magazine, her influence was felt in the highest corridors of power. As an unofficial advisor to First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, she helped shape the image of Camelot. She understood that the First Lady's wardrobe was a form of soft power, a visual language that could communicate American sophistication and modernity on the world stage. From the clean lines of the Oleg Cassini day dresses to the glamour of the state dinner gowns, Vreeland's touch was there, guiding, refining, and elevating. For 8 glorious, tumultuous years, Diana Vreeland was the undisputed, absolute monarch of style. The world looked to Vogue to know what was beautiful, what was new, what was next, and the answer, always, was whatever Diana Vreeland said it was: empires fall, dynasties end. And in 1971, the reign of Empress Diana came to a sudden, shocking, and brutal conclusion. Without ceremony, without a farewell party, without even a proper goodbye, Diana Vreeland was fired from Vogue. The news was a thunderclap. How could this happen? The reasons were a bitter cocktail of finance and zeitgeist. The extravagant, budget-be-damned photo shoots had finally become an untenable liability for Vogue's parent company, Condé Nast. Alexander Lieberman, the company's powerful editorial director and a one-time ally, made the final decision. The Fantasy Factory had become too expensive to run, but the deeper reason was a profound cultural shift. The exuberant psychedelic dream of the 60s was over, replaced by the hangover of the 70s. The world was now grappling with the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal, and the rise of second-wave feminism. A new consciousness was emerging, one that valued naturalism, authenticity, and political engagement. Suddenly, Vreeland's brand of opulent, aristocratic escapism seemed not just extravagant, but irrelevant. Her fantastical pronouncements, once seen as charmingly eccentric, now felt jarringly out of touch with a generation of women who were fighting for equal pay, not debating whether to wear diamond roses. The Youthquake she had so brilliantly captured had moved on, and for the first time in her life, Diana Vreeland was left behind. The dismissal was a profound personal devastation. She was nearly 70. Her beloved husband, Reed, had died a few years prior. Vogue wasn't just her job, it was her entire world, the stage upon which she performed her existence. To be cast out so unceremoniously was a public humiliation and a deep personal wound. She was a general stripped of her command, an actress pushed off the stage. She felt, in her own words, erased. She faced an empty future, plagued by financial insecurity and the terrifying prospect of irrelevance. For a woman like Diana, the ultimate terror. For years she drifted, a queen in exile. It seemed the great, dazzling story of Diana Vreeland had come to a sad and quiet end. But a true force of nature does not simply vanish, it transforms. And Diana Vreeland was about to stage the most magnificent second act in the history of fashion. In 1972, the call came. It was from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They wanted her to be a special consultant for their Costume Institute. At the time, the Costume Institute was a dusty and neglected corner of the great museum. It was a place for scholars, its exhibitions often consisting of rows of historical garments on headless, lifeless mannequins under flat, unforgiving light. It was academic, it was important, but it was profoundly boring. It was a cemetery of clothes. Diana Vreeland was about to resurrect the dead. She descended upon the Met with the full force of her visionary zeal. She applied the same principles she had used at Vogue: storytelling, drama, and unapologetic theatricality. She understood that these clothes were not just textiles. They were relics of extraordinary lives and moments in history. They deserved to be presented with emotion and magic. Her exhibitions became the hottest tickets in town, cultural phenomena that drew unprecedented crowds. Her first blockbuster, The World of Balenciaga in 1973, was a revelation. She infused the galleries with the scent of the designer's signature perfume, played dramatic Spanish music, and used pin spot lighting to carve the gowns out of the darkness. She hired famous hairdressers to style the mannequins' wigs and makeup artists to paint their faces, giving them personality and life. While academics and curatorial purists were horrified by her lack of scholarly rigor and focus on spectacle, the public was utterly enchanted. She followed this with a string of legendary shows: romantic and glamorous Hollywood design, The Glory of Russian Costume, Vanity Fair. For her 1980 show on Manchu dragon robes, she famously had the scent of stale incense, which she claimed was the true scent of the Forbidden City, wafted through the galleries. She wrote the copy for the exhibition catalogs herself, filling them with her signature faction, glorious romanticized histories that captured the spirit, if not always the precise facts, of the era she presented. It was Vreeland who single-handedly transformed the exhibition opening nights from stuffy, polite affairs into the star-drenched high-fashion galas that laid the foundation for the modern Met Gala. She understood the potent alchemy of mixing high society, Hollywood celebrity, fashion designers, and artists, creating an event that was the talk of the town. In this final brilliant act, Diana Vreeland achieved her ultimate vindication. She had been fired for being out of touch with reality. But at the Met, she proved that she was a master of creating a new, more compelling reality. She took fashion, the commercial art form that had discarded her, and gave it a permanent, hallowed place in the temple of high art. Diana Vreeland died in 1989. She spent her last years in her famous Red Park Avenue apartment, her eyesight failing, a final cruel twist for a woman who lived so intensely through her vision. She was surrounded by her memories, her treasures, and the grand myth she had so carefully constructed. Her legacy is not found in a single dress or photograph, but in an entire way of seeing the world. She permanently changed the role of the editor from a merchant of clothes to a purveyor of dreams. She left us with a lexicon of Vreelandisms that are as much a philosophy for life as for style. There's only one very good life, and that's the life you know you want, and you make it yourself. The eye has to travel, and of course a style is everything. Her life story is the ultimate testament to her own philosophy, the self-proclaimed ugly duckling who spent a lifetime convincing the world to see beauty her way. The deposed empress who built a new, more lasting kingdom in the halls of a museum. She was difficult, she was extravagant, she was a glorious fantasist who often bent the truth until it snapped. But she was never, ever boring. And that's all for today's video. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe to Hollywood Quest so you won't miss out on future uploads. See you next time.